Stay tuned until the end to discover how you can build wealth by investing in art, a timeless asset that tells stories as enduring as history itself. By the 4th century AD, the once great empires of India, which had withstood centuries of change, now stood as fragmented echoes of their former glory. Ancient traditions, towering monuments, and sacred texts survived, but the unified lands that nurtured them had fractured into smaller, independent kingdoms. Amid this disunity, a modest dynasty began to rise under the leadership of King Chandragupta I, laying the foundation for what would become one of India's most celebrated empires, the Gupta Empire. After Chandragupta's reign, the throne passed to his son, the formidable Samudragupta, whose name would be etched into history as a conqueror and patron of the arts. A warrior king of unmatched ambition, Samudragupta took pride in his battle scars, viewing them as emblems of valor and legitimacy. Determined to expand his dominion, he commanded his forges to burn day and night, crafting weapons of war and preparing his forces. His army, a fearsome combination of war elephants, cavalry, and infantry, became the backbone of his campaigns. Under Samudragupta's leadership, the Gupta dynasty began to unify the scattered kingdoms, reviving not just political order, but a golden age of culture and innovation. His story reminds us of how ambition, preparation, and resilience can forge legacies, whether on the battlefield or in today's world of investment. Just as Samudragupta saw opportunity in the chaos of fragmented India, you too can seize opportunities to grow and preserve your wealth. Art, much like history, is an enduring investment that tells a story of power, vision, and legacy. In earlier times, Alexander the Great, the indomitable conqueror of the West, had marched east with dreams of subduing the world. Yet, as he reached the edges of India, it was the prospect of facing its vast armies, their ranks swelled with war elephants and determined defenders, that finally compelled his troops to turn back. From the remnants of such encounters rose the Mauryan Empire, a state that ruled over a territory vast enough to rival Alexander's own conquests, flourishing for over a century before its decline. Now, 500 years later, the tides of history brought forth a new power, the Gupta Empire, led by the ambitious and relentless Samudragupta. Determined to carve out a legacy, Samudragupta rallied his forces and launched sweeping campaigns across the subcontinent. His enemies, struck down by a storm of spears and arrows, crumbled before him. He defeated 9 kings of the Ganges River basin, annexing their fertile lands into the growing empire. Neighboring regions, perhaps anticipating the fate of their counterparts, submitted to his might, agreeing to become tributary states rather than face the wrath of his advancing army. The Gupta military, like its predecessors, relied on the traditional might of elephants and light infantry, yet its true strength lay in its heavy cavalry. These mounted warriors, inspired by the tactics of nomadic horse archers from the northwest, were a game-changer in Indian warfare. Nomads had introduced the region to the deadly precision of mounted archery, a skill quickly adopted and perfected by Indian armies. This innovation was especially vital as roaming armies began overrunning parts of South Asia once under Greek influence, regions where the philosophies of Aristotle and the teachings of the Buddha had long intertwined. In these borderlands, a unique Greco-Buddhist culture persisted, blending Hellenistic artistry with Indian spirituality. Here, the faces of Roman emperors were inscribed with the flowing curves of Brahmi script, and statues of the Buddha and his disciples were rendered with intricate Hellenistic detail, bridging 2 vastly different worlds. While Samudragupta was a patron of the arts, ensuring the Gupta Empire became a beacon of culture, his immediate ambitions were elsewhere, not westward but southward toward the eastern coast, where trade ports bustled with activity and wealth awaited conquest. Through dense forests and along ancient paths, Samudragupta's army marched, their campaign imbued with a sense of divine purpose. For many, including the emperor himself, their mission was seen as guided by Vishnu, the supreme and benevolent ruler of the universe in Hindu belief. Under Vishnu's auspices, Samudragupta envisioned the Gupta dynasty as divinely ordained, a force destined to unite and elevate the subcontinent. This belief, paired with military prowess and strategic foresight, set the stage for the Gupta Empire's rise to prominence, securing its place in the annals of history as a golden age of Indian civilization. Samudragupta's warriors scattered their enemies across the battlefield, leaving behind a trail of blood as they advanced towards the coastal kingdoms. Temples, farms, and homes were likely spared, for despite his victories over 12 kings during this campaign, Samudragupta chose to restore them to their thrones, requiring only that they submit to the empire and become tributaries. This approach, while strategically practical, also demonstrated his clemency, earning him widespread admiration as both an unconquerable and noble ruler. In recognition of his power, distant kings sent him gifts and offered their daughters in marriage. His influence extended from the southeastern shores to the sacred foothills of the Himalayas. To further solidify his dominance, Samudragupta performed the ancient Ashvamedha ritual. In this rite, a horse was released to roam the empire for a year, accompanied by a band of the king's warriors. Any ruler who dared challenge his authority could attempt to capture the horse or ambush the king's men, a bold act of defiance against the emperor's claim to supreme power. The party returned safely, their mission complete, and the ceremonial horse sacrifice was performed, a ritual of profound significance, symbolizing the emperor's divine right to rule. With this act, Samudragupta firmly established himself as the undisputed ruler of the vast territories he had claimed. His reign marked the pinnacle of Gupta power, a golden age of political stability, cultural flourishing, and military dominance. Yet the legacy of conquest and expansion did not end with him. It continued under his illustrious son, Chandragupta II. Taking up his father's mantle, Chandragupta II embarked on campaigns that further extended the empire's reach. Among his most notable achievements was the expansion to the western coast, where bustling port cities became hubs of international trade. Merchants from distant lands, Rome, Egypt, and beyond, sailed to these shores, drawn by the wealth and sophistication of the Gupta Empire. The trade routes they traveled connected the civilizations of the East and West, forming a vibrant network of cultural and economic exchange. These connections had deep roots. Centuries earlier, Indian artifacts had been unearthed in Pompeii, buried beneath volcanic ash, but testifying to the early ties between the two worlds. Roman coins, often found in India, bore further evidence of a robust commercial relationship. As goods flowed along these routes, so too did ideas and philosophies. Through Roman Egypt, an array of gold, silver, and Italian wine made its way eastward, while Indian ivory, spices, fine silks, iron, and steel enriched Western markets. The Gupta Empire stood at the crossroads of this exchange, its strategic position allowing it to thrive as both a cultural and economic powerhouse. Chandragupta II's reign solidified this prosperity, with the empire's wealth attracting scholars, artisans, and traders from across the known world. Under his leadership, the Gupta dynasty reached new heights, becoming a beacon of ingenuity and influence in an interconnected world. Indian craftsmen of the Gupta Empire were celebrated throughout the ancient world for their unparalleled metalworking skills, producing goods of extraordinary precision and beauty. As the empire flourished, so did its industries, with cities buzzing with activity. Merchant, artisan, and weaver guilds not only drove the economy, but also gained considerable influence in local governance, playing an essential role in shaping the society of the time. Across the empire, magnificent monuments dedicated to worship rose to the heavens, embodying the artistic and spiritual aspirations of the age. The Gupta era also became synonymous with intellectual brilliance. The empire's universities and centers of learning, such as Nalanda, attracted scholars from across the world, laying the foundations for groundbreaking advances in mathematics, astronomy, and science. Among the most remarkable achievements was the innovative use of zero as a placeholder in the decimal system, allowing for increasingly complex calculations. This concept eventually evolved into the first true zero used as a number, a revolutionary idea that would prove essential for understanding negative numbers and advancing mathematical theory across cultures. In the realm of astronomy and trigonometry, the Gupta period saw the rise of the brilliant scholar Aryabhata, whose contributions would shape scientific thought for centuries. Aryabhata refined trigonometric functions, including sine and cosine, and calculated pi to the fourth decimal place with remarkable accuracy. His observations of the stars were groundbreaking. Aryabhata correctly identified that the apparent movement of stars across the sky was due to the rotation of the Earth. To explain this relativity of motion, he used a striking analogy. Just as a man in a moving boat perceives the stationary objects on the shore as moving backward, so too did the stationary stars appear to move westward from Earth's rotating perspective. The stability and prosperity of the Gupta Empire provided a sense of security that allowed such advancements to flourish. Yet, challenges to this stability emerged as the empire faced increasing pressure from nomadic tribes. In the mid-5th century, Skanda Gupta, one of the last powerful rulers of the dynasty, successfully repelled an invasion, securing the borders for a time. However, these incursions grew bolder and more frequent, threatening the empire's hard-won peace. Compounding these challenges, Indian kings began a practice of granting conquered territories to the Brahmin class, often at the expense of tribal leaders who were displaced from their ancestral lands. While these grants helped consolidate power and establish Brahmin-dominated settlements, they also created tensions with local tribes, further destabilizing the outer regions of the empire. As the nomads pressed against the weakened borders, the cracks in the once mighty Gupta Empire began to show, signaling the gradual decline of a golden age that had shaped the intellectual and cultural landscape of India and the world forever. During this period, the four Varnas, social classes described in Hindu scriptures, began to harden into rigid, professional, and hereditary categories. Though general prosperity had improved the status of Shudra peasants, a Chinese traveler named F.A. Xian noted the severe marginalization of those considered outside the Varna system altogether. This growing, untouchable class was forced to live on the fringes of society, beyond the bounds of towns. F.A. Xian, who came to India as a pilgrim, noted that he faced no persecution himself. This was, after all, the land where the Buddha had lived and taught centuries earlier. Stupa shrines dotted the landscape, and mantras echoed from caves where monks lived in elaborate monasteries. Though the Gupta emperors were devout Hindus, they remained notably tolerant of Jainism and Buddhism. The fragile peace of the Gupta Empire would ultimately shatter in the face of a relentless force from the steppes. In 520 AD, Buddhist monks recorded the horrifying destruction of their order, their scriptures filled with despair as riders from the Alkan Huns swept through the land. These nomadic invaders, known for their mastery of horse archery and ruthless tactics, left a trail of ash and blood in their wake. Temples burned, monks were slaughtered, and centuries of cultural and spiritual harmony were violently disrupted. The arrival of the Huns marked the end of a golden age and the beginning of a dark chapter in India's history. The Huns were led by a figure whose name would echo in infamy for centuries. Mihirakula, a warlord so feared that his very presence was said to herald death. As his armies advanced, the skies above seemed to darken with vultures, crows, and carrion birds, drawn to the carnage that followed in his wake. The ominous sight of these scavengers served as a grim warning to those in his path. To his victims, Mihirakula became a god of death, his reputation for cruelty and destruction earning him a place among the most dreaded figures in Indian history. Mihirakula was a ruler of the Alkan Huns, a branch of the Hunnic tribes that had once swept across Europe and Central Asia, leaving devastation in their wake. He was the son of Toramana, a great conqueror who had pushed deep into Indian territory before being driven back by the resurgence of regional powers. But where Toramana's ambitions had faltered, Mihirakula sought to reignite them. Adorned with a diadem atop his artificially elongated skull, a distinctive feature of Hunnic rulers, Mihirakula commanded his armies with brutal efficiency. His campaigns pushed southward, overwhelming local defenses and carving a path of terror. His ruthlessness extended not only to his enemies, but to the land itself, as he systematically destroyed Buddhist monasteries, burned towns, and massacred entire populations, obliterating the cultural and religious centers that had flourished under the Gupta Empire. The return of the Huns, now led by Mihirakula, signaled a turning point in India's history. The once stable northern regions, a cradle of culture and spirituality, were plunged into chaos. The balance of power shifted as kingdoms fractured under the weight of these invasions, and the remnants of the Gupta Empire struggled to hold back. The tide, Mihirakula's name became synonymous with destruction, his reign a grim reminder of the devastation wrought by the Huns, a force that for a time seemed unstoppable. The path was cleared, for the Gupta Empire had receded to the east, weathered by prior invasions and possible natural disaster. The Huns leveled cities and massacred people in their conquest, but they were no simple horde of ravagers. The conquerors were keen to establish themselves as legitimate overlords. In old Gupta towns, coins were issued in the image of Mihirakula, a Hun king who now worshipped a Hindu deity, not Vishnu, but the god of destruction, Shiva. The Huns had not wandered into the mere destitute remains of the Gupta Empire. Rather, the autonomy the Guptas had long extended to their subject states now empowered former feudatories and successors to function without the empire. And so it was an alliance of regional kings, including King Yashadharman of the Central Indian Alikara dynasty, who emerged to face Mihirakula. The Huns buried them in Eros, but the Indian troops pushed forward to the furious bellow of war elephants and the clatter of armor and blades. The will of the invaders was broken as they fell into chaos. The Huns were hacked and trampled across the valley, and it was written King Mihirakula had never been forced to bow in humility by anyone save Shiva, but Yasodharman bent that monarch's head painfully down into deference. The Huns were driven out, exiled to the north, but the victory of non-Gupta kings signaled the shift in power. Here was the soft twilight of the Gupta Empire, gone before the end of the 6th century. And yet the achievements of those within the empire and its extended cultural sphere outlived the might of its armies. Gupta period advancements in mathematics and astronomy would later reach the Islamic world and then Europe, contributing to further scientific innovation. And in India, there remained temples and ruins of Hindu, Jain, and Buddhist tradition, some lost for centuries to the wilderness. Sacred monuments sat in lonely halls like shadowed visions from the Golden Age, the age of the Gupta Empire. Wondrous works of art from the Gupta period indicated enduring prosperity, the patronage of elites. Today, the work of great artists has become a powerful financial tool for preserving wealth. And today's sponsor, Masterworks, opens the door for anyone to take. Part in this by buying and selling fractional shares of high-value art. When the pandemic hit, many investments suffered their worst years since the 2008 financial crisis. According to Bank of America research, art sales experienced a remarkable surge in 2021, climbing 70% year over year, and continued to rise by 13% in 2022, setting a new all-time high for yearly sales. Deloitte forecasts that the global art market will grow by an astounding $1 trillion by 2026, presenting a huge opportunity for everyday investors. If you're looking to get involved, Masterworks offers a unique opportunity. They've developed an exclusive database that tracks decades of auction records, giving you the chance to invest in fractional shares of contemporary art from legendary artists like Picasso, Banksy, and Monet.